That's pleasant. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, bro. On that happy thought.
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone out to the Edge Mastermind call today. My name is Courtney Moses, and I will be facilitating the call today. Um, I was talking with my leader Seth Rizman yesterday, and we're talking about personal development. And in this journey with doTERRA, there's a lot of talk around personal development, right? To become more or better, to become the best version of yourself. And there are many who go and they participate in personal development seminars or hire coaches or purchase programs or books and all these things to try to become better. And what I'd like to discuss today on the mastermind is this topic of personal development and why, if we need it, and what you're really gaining by doing any one of these things that I already mentioned. I got thinking about this, and last summer I decided I was going to go run a half marathon. Now, keep in mind, when I decided to do this, like I've never run more than 5 miles before, and even at that, it was like a jog, walk, right? And so this was completely outside of my comfort zone to go and do something like this, or even my ability at that matter. And so I hired a coach. I started a training program. I started working on my diet, and I was preparing for this half marathon. And after the marathon, I did it. I felt great. I got the time I wanted, and I had all this knowledge of how to now prepare for something like that, right? And then right after it, I was just tired of running because I had to work so hard to get into the condition to even accomplish that goal that I was just done with it. I'm like, I don't even want to run anymore. I don't want to think about my diet anymore. I just was tired of all of it. And then naturally, because I did one, here comes the next summer, and I think, oh, I want to go do a half marathon again. And so because I wasn't consistent in any of the things that I learned, any of the knowledge or skills that I gained through the training, I'm now having to start over basically from square one. I can't go do more than 5 miles right now, and having to hire the coach again and go through the diet again and like all of this stuff. And I got thinking about it, and I'm like, why did I do that? Why was I not consistent in applying anything that I've learned? And I see us do this with personal development as well, right? And so you see people go to training after events and buy these books that sit on a shelf that they never open up, or just all these different things, right? Or maybe they apply some of it and not all of it. Maybe they're consistent in some, not. I mean, it's just kind of this crazy little thing. We go to these events and we get super excited, and then we think I'm going to do this, and we get energized and motivated, and then we go home, and it's like as soon as you step like a foot into your door, this is what happens with me. I have three little boys that come and attack me, and all of a sudden everything that you just learned and wanted to implement like just doesn't happen, right? Like you have to go home and set aside time to even start implementing anything that you learn. And so, what I want to talk about today and discuss is, what we can learn from each other on personal development. And so, the first question that I want to, throw out here to the diamonds and above or platinums and above is, why did you start the journey of personal development, and when did you start that?
Hey, Court.
So, if you were muted, you can start by starting to raise your hand. But when did you start on your journey of personal development, and why? And that could be, the first time you ever bought a book, the first seminar you ever went to, anything like that.
Hey, Courtney.
Yeah.
So, personal development has actually been, we were talking about this yesterday when we were kind of discussing this topic, and I also discussed it with Rod a little bit as well. But I started doing personal development when I was a little kid, when my parents took me to church. That is personal development, and because. And I think the interesting thing about our conversation is we were talking about the similarities between it and exercising, and how like we were mentioning, like Rod and I we were driving down the road the other day, and we were discussing the fact that we had people would go to these personal development seminars. I think he was talking about someone, having him walk into an arrow into his neck, like you have to walk into an arrow with it sticking into your neck or something like that. And we do the Nature of Success trainings, which are a 3-day training event. And we would do all of that personal development. And what I realized is that, it's difficult. I guess my point is that that caused me to consider just how much personal development I've done. And I didn't realize that my church attendance was my very first personal development, but it is. It's every week I'm going there, hearing the same things I've heard my entire life, being reminded of the principles that I've been taught, that, of honesty and integrity and all of these different things, with an attempt to hopefully live according to what you say you believe or are taught. And so I think that's a huge thing. Outside of the church personal development, when I started doing summer sales programs, people started mentioning the importance of reading and constantly doing that. And so, and trying to be better. And so I started getting books on how to sell and reading those. And then I got into this idea of I just want to make sure that every morning I'm reading 30 minutes from some sort of business related book. And so that kind of became a way that I've incorporated that. And then I went to a crocodiles course about, 10 years ago or so. And I think that was the first seminar that I went to that was an actual personal development type of a thing. And I when I did that, you asked why I did that. I actually took that course from Roger Anthony before he passed away. I took it from him a few times, but every time I took the course, it typically was when I needed help, and I knew that I needed help, and I knew I didn't have all of the answers. Maybe like I don't want to be too vulnerable here, but it's but like at one point when my wife and I, when our marriage was struggling, and I realized we couldn't do this on our own, and so we sought out help, and we did that through personal development. And I've mentioned this on the call as well, that we also I actually go to a counselor with my wife. We do it about once a month or every month and a half. And it really is just kind of like a tune-up. Like, like we go to, it really is. It's kind of like, hey, here, it's an acknowledgement that we really don't know everything. And somebody else knows more than we do in certain areas of life. And it's wise to get coaches and seek that out so that you can try to be successful in the things that matter most. And I don't, Jenny and I don't go to counseling because we hate each other. We go to counseling because we love each other, and we want it, and we want our relationship to be as good as it can possibly be. So those are the reasons why that's when I started and how I've sought out personal development and why.
So you bring up some good points here, Seth. I just want to clarify a few things. Like, you first, were introduced to it by someone else, by your parents.
Right.
By taking you to church. So at that point, you weren't old enough to think, I want to become better, right? But you were introduced to it by parents. And then, you heard from someone that you should start reading, so then you did it. So it wasn't something that just intuitively came to you, like, oh, I should do this. It was someone else, either their example or, guidance, and, hey, you should look into this. But you're like, okay. So first you were humble enough and teachable enough to listen to the advice and guidance of others. You know what I mean?
Or it got bad enough that I was desperate enough to do it. Yeah, or it got bad enough that I was desperate enough to do it. But yeah, that tended to be it.
Right. And so you've done books, you've done seminars, and then you said because you didn't feel like you had all the answers, you were missing something, and so you started seeking things out.
Like a coach or counseling and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And was it so part of it's personal life, part of it's career, any other phases of life?
Well, so the areas of life I try to find help and counseling or personal development in is my spiritual life, my financial life, my family life, and my relationships, and my business life as well. So skills and things like that.
Okay, awesome. Kristen Fox, you are next. Yes. Well, that was awesome. I have as you were talking, yeah, I think that I've also been in a whole life of personal development just because of going to church since my parents started taking me when I was a little kid. But when Courtney first asked the question, my thoughts immediately just went to when did I first start doing personal development was when I really cared about being successful at doTERRA. And Courtney said, if you want to be successful, you have to read a book. Here are some choices. What are you going to read? And I was like, oh, I'm going to read that one. So I started reading it. And I had actually been given that book that I found a few months later in a box downstairs. I'd been given the book called The Magic of Thinking Big. And it was by someone who was in a network marketing company trying really hard to get me to build his business. Or to do it, and it was, and I didn't want to, and so the book, I didn't open it really, and I didn't use it, but it was when I wanted something more than I knew how to do, which is what Seth said a couple of times, when my thoughts, it didn't work, like, and anything that I could think or fathom wasn't going where I knew I needed to go. That's when I've always reached out for personal development. And it's as I do look back. I mean, I did hire a coach to help me run a marathon. I've done like trades with other moms to help me learn how to make bread and like to be a good mom. And I would have these, times when I just sit with other women and we discuss better ways to, do meal planning and discipline children and things like that. That I realize I've had mentors that have personally developed me in my life, and more that also cross over into our business. So I really just did it because you told me to, Courtney. And what's really interesting about that whole thing is that when I first started really reading that book, The Magic of Thinking Big, I liked it. There were, several sentences that kind of popped out to me. And then the other time of reading the book, it was almost like how I watch sports. Nathan just laughed at me. But it's like my eyes are crossed and I'm just going through the motions and I don't really comprehend what's happening until a certain sentence sticks out and I'm like, oh, that applies to me. And then as I have found that I've grown in personal development, I can reread those same books that I've supposedly read. And it's like brand new material to me because I'm finally ready to move forward. And so it's like now I'm going through the library that we've had on the shelf for a while and it's like, oh wait, I know I've missed something amazing. And so let me reread that. So it's true that when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and you can find that in all different areas of your life. Yeah, that's true. And for anyone that doesn't know this already, I'm like a huge personal development junkie, right? And so I do tell lots of people to read, and I got that from Seth. So one of the reasons why I ever started in personal development, and mine was through reading. I first started purchasing some books, is because I was in a summer sub program with my leader Seth Resume, and I remember just going to these meetings every morning and watching him motivate and inspire the team, and I would see changes in them. Like I would start to see these really boys and trying to become men. I would see the changes in them. I would see their appearance start to change, the way they carry themselves, their confidence, and I'm like, oh my word, what is it that they're doing? And I want to do that. And I would start to see other people that would have certain attributes or skills that I wanted, and so I wanted to do whatever it was they were doing. And so that's when I first started, was reading books, because I'm like, I want to do whatever they're doing to become who they are because I like what I'm seeing in that. You know what I mean? Kim Allen, you're next.
This is actually Todd.
Oh, hey, Todd.
Hi.
Sorry, it's my name that's showing up.
I know. Hopefully I don't sound like him. But,
No.
thinking about when I first started getting self-developed. It was my dad gave me a book when I was in high school called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And at the time, I was kind of, a young kid, thought he knew everything and had friends. Didn't understand why I needed to read a book on how to get more friends. But I'm so glad that he gave that to me, because it's like, I think of self-developing is like, for me, like I work out every single day because I absolutely love it, and my day is not complete without it. And it's the same thing with self-developing. If I don't listen to something uplifting and encouraging for me, it just messes with my day. So ever since high school, I've just made sure I listened to something every single day or read something uplifting to get the day started.
Okay, so something you started in high school, and you still do that today?
Yeah, every single morning.
Hey, Courtney.
And for that, how long do you do that? Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think it's.
A lot of times.
I was just gonna say, I think
Go ahead,
I think it's telling that. I mean, Todd and Kim are a young couple, and the fact that they're at such a young age, I think that's a testament to the fact that he started personal development in high school. This isn't something I figured out until I was, other than the church personal development. Anyway, I'm just going to say that I think that's a reason why Kim and Todd have reached diamond at such a young age.
Right. Well, it's true. I mean, and I think about it like this too. I wasn't introduced into personal development until I was in my 20s, right?
Right.
And even then, it was just little at the time. It really wasn't until my 30s that I really got big in personal development. And now I look at, all these things I wish I knew when I was younger, and I look at my kids and they're introduced into personal development at the ages of 5, right? Because I'm teaching them that and I'm getting them involved in that world now. And I see the difference that makes and how much more successful and ahead in life they're going to be at a younger age than I was, because I wasn't exposed to it and 5 years old or whatever. You know what I mean? And so I think what you're saying is absolutely true, because I even see that with my own kids and things that they're going to have the upper hand in simply because they're exposed to it at a younger age.
Courtney, can I add one more quick thing?
Yes, please.
So if you really want to get a kickstart to your day, I found that listening to, I do a lot of Audible and listening to books on tape. But if you do that while you're exercising, or you're out running or walking, it seems like my mind at least is a lot more opened up to listening to the things while I'm moving around, exercising. So I don't know if that's for everybody else, but if you're finding yourself kind of having a hard time getting through your 30 minutes, try moving around a little bit while you're listening or reading, because I found that really helps me as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd.
Great point.
Seth, my computer's freezing up. Is there any other hands that are raised?
Yeah, let me check.
So again, the question is, when did you start personal development and why?
So I have a 717 area code. I just unmuted their line. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, they should go ahead.
I'm Beate, and I'm fairly new to doTERRA, and personal development is really very dear to my heart, because, all of us want to become the best that we can be. So without personal development, we absolutely are not effective, okay? That's my prerequisite here. Zeth made some really good points, and that made me raise my hand, because I was raised atheist in Germany and I was atheist for 30 years until I figured out there was a God, and it, of course, floored me totally. And when I placed God in the center of my life, I actually started to develop myself into a really awesome direction that I am still pursuing. And my point is that the way I do my personal development is that I start with reading my Bible in the morning, and my biggest role model that I'm following is Jesus Christ. I'm looking at his life and how he treated people, how he walked with people, and what were his goals of his day and things like that. so that not that I will ever achieve, but I can sense that God goes before me, and that makes me a very effective person in my personal life. So I'm not looking at other people, although I read a lot of books, about personal development, and I even listened to Tony Robinson for like 2 sessions and totally rejected his way of doing things, and he is a great leader, no doubt. But the concept is, like the Bible tells us, that we always have to go back to our first love. May that be Jesus, as it is in my case, or to Tara, or our family, or your husband or wife, whatever. We all get to in our life. We all get to kind of these close calls and to these very narrow, discouraging phases where we say, well, what the heck is I'm about? Why I'm doing this? And then when we go back to why we started to do things, and we know personally why we started to do things, that is, our bottom line, our foundation. And from there on, we can build every single day and go beyond what we actually set out to achieve. Because at the end of the day, you just say, wow, we really accomplished something. And that's what I make my life goal, is living as unto the Lord, helping people as much as I can. And that gives me my satisfaction and my personal development.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was just beautiful. I love it, and I love that you talked about obviously Jesus Christ, because I think obviously it's a great role model for anyone how they should live their life, and that you go back to your foundation. You made him your foundation, and as I think about that as you were talking, again, so many of us will buy a book and put it on the shelf and never read it, or go to a seminar and never implement anything that we learned from it. And so, what is it then that whether you go to a seminar or read a book, how do you consistently apply, the things that you've learned to make that a foundation in your life, to create those habits? Because, ultimately, that's what we're all trying to do, right? We're all trying to create these successful habits, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that then?
Courtney, were you asking that of her?
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's just for anyone. I'm just throwing that out there. She was just bringing up a good point.
Okay,
so for anyone that wants to answer that.
Sorry, what was the question again?
So how do you consistently apply what you've learned so you can actually create the habits that you're looking for? Because we can go, right, and read lots of books and never grow from it. We can go to lots of seminars and never truly grow from it. So what is it that you do, or how do you consistently apply what you've learned or the knowledge you've gained to create the habits you want?
So David Ellis has his hand raised.
All right, David.
So the first thing that came to my mind when you asked that question is the fact that you have to find ways to teach it, which is why, honestly, doTERRA is such an amazing vehicle. And it's just that, it's a vehicle. There's other ways you can do it, but the reality is that if your purpose here, and in this existence, is to become the best version of yourself, and that's done through development, personal development, and that's the goal of this life, right, is to come down and be the best you can and come up with what you can and create the best version of who you can be. So if that's really the purpose, then doTERRA is just simply, it just magnifies that, right? It speeds up that process, because what it does is it forces you it literally puts all your weaknesses right in front of your face, and then says, now go do something about it. Too often, it's really easy for us to just, get into the mundane aspects of life. We go to work, we come home, we eat dinner, we watch some TV, go to bed. Right? Do that same process over and over again. And so then crises have to happen in your life for you to have to deal with or to grow or to develop. And so it's one thing to be forced to grow and develop and be forced to become a better person by life, just kicking you you know,
Right? Okay, you can say.
to be the best version of yourself, or to choose to overcome. And that's really what doTERRA is. It's a choice to speed up that personal progression. And you've heard a lot from a lot of people. I've heard a lot of people say doTERRA is just a personal development company wrapped up in an essential oil.
Right.
Because
Yeah, in fact, Emily Wright has said that.
Yeah, because it forces you to stare your weaknesses right in the face and make a choice that you're going to go do something about it. And so I go back to my original comment. The way that you do something about it is you go teach somebody else the principles that you've just learned. So when you teach them, if you teach them, it's difficult for you to teach them with any sort of passion or conviction if you're not doing them. So it's right to go out and say, okay, hey, you need to go out and contact people, and you need to teach people about the oils, and then you need to follow up with people, and that's how you build a very successful business. It's tough for you to stand there and teach that with conviction and passion and being convincing if you're not doing it. And so, of course, you have to do it, but one of the ways that inspires you to do it is to teach it. And when you teach it, it is so. So whenever you ask if you go to a seminar or you go to a workshop or you do something, you learn about it, and then how you keep it is what I like to do is anytime, whether it's a workshop, a seminar, or just the book I read that morning, I learned something really cool. I look for a way to teach whatever I thought was cool. Because if I teach it, then I retain it. Mm-hmm. If I don't teach it, I typically don't retain it, and that's because maybe I just don't have as good a memory as other people. But I found that if I turn around and I find opportunities to apply that information and to teach that information, then I can do it myself and I can retain it.
Hey,
I love that you said that, David. I think that is so incredibly brilliant. And one thing I just want to point out with that is that you're not saying, wait until you master this to go teach it, right? I mean, hey, I learned it this morning, I'm going to go teach someone about it today, right? And I think sometimes we worry about becoming a master of something before we teach it, right? And so I love that you brought this up because, I actually didn't think about that when I asked myself that question, and I think you're just dead on. I think that's just the bottom line right there. You cannot, learn it well enough, and if you are going to be the teacher. And I look at, as I've taught in church or business trainings or anything like that before, the one that's learned the most out of it is the teacher, right? Because you're the one that's trying to gather the information and to apply it and teach it. And so you do learn the most. You need to retain the most when you're the teacher. So if you can do that, but I think that you are dead on, and that's one of the best ways to implement and be consistent in what you've learned. Seth, were you going to add something to that?
Just the fact that I'll take it a step further and say that if you can't articulate or explain to another person a concept, then you actually don't understand the concept very well at all. And so it's actually it's actually a great barometer to see kind of how well you understand things, because if you can't explain it, you don't really understand it. Melissa Guthrie has her hand raised.
Okay, and one thing before you say that, Melissa, I've also heard it said before, to know and not to do is not to know.
Right.
That's that same thing go back to. So you can say, yeah, I know that I read it, but if you're not doing it, you really don't know it.
Right.
All right, Melissa.
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of my thoughts. And I absolutely concur with what David Ellis has said about to really get those principles ingrained is to teach them. That's the best way. But what I have found, maybe some of you have been through, a class in psychology where they talk about behavior change. That's really what we're talking about. We're talking about personal development is where we're creating a behavior change in ourselves, a different way of thinking, a different way of acting, a different way of being. And there's a statement that says, in terms of what it takes to create this change in behavior, is that when the discomfort or the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain or discomfort of changing, you will make the change. And so what I have found in my own life, in some of the areas where I have made the biggest changes in my behavior, is when I have gotten to a point of dissatisfaction, pain, disgust, whatever you want to call it, with some area of my life, and I was like, enough is enough. I will no longer live my life in this way, or I will no longer settle for these mediocre results, or whatever the case may be. And at that point, it's like all hands on deck, like burn the boats. There's no going back, and I've just dived completely into every aspect of personal development that is required to elicit the change that I am seeking. And so I've seen that for other people as well. And I've seen where when somebody's just comfortable in their situation, even though it might not be their ideal, right? They might be, living paycheck to paycheck, but it's comfy for them. They're not motivated to engage in personal development. They're not necessarily motivated to work on themselves and to put in the hours and the work of looking deep inside of themselves and having to change some things. And so they'll just keep living paycheck to paycheck. But it's that person who is so dissatisfied with their station in life that they will exhaust all costs, all resources. They will go to exorbitant ends to do what they need to do to change their way of thinking, their way of acting, their way of being, to create better results for themselves and others. And when you really start to get a grasp on that with personal development, it becomes less of a daily task, and it actually just weaves its way into your life, and you do it almost on autopilot without even really thinking about it. If anyone's read the book The Big Leap, and of course I lead the Edge Team Book Club, and I definitely invite anyone to come be part of that book club, because we cover some really powerful books and concepts. But one of the books that we covered last year was The Big Leap, and he talks about 4 different levels of competency, right? So you have the first level, which is where you're, and now my mind is going blank. It's your highest moment. Exactly. Where you're, okay, here we go. Okay, so you're a conscious incompetence, which means you're incompetent at this particular, or unconscious incompetent, which means you're incompetent but you don't even know it. It's like a total blind spot. And then you have where you're a conscious incompetent, where you're not good at it and you know you're not good at it, but maybe you still do it anyways. And then you have the where you're a conscious competent, and that's where you, like, you're good at it and you know you're good at it, and it's a strength to you. And then you have that unconscious competent, where you're good at it, but you do it like almost on autopilot. So it's like without even thinking about it, it's just like your natural way of being. And you can take the principles of personal development and you can work on them and create it to a point where you're an unconscious competent at it. It's like, it's just autopilot. You just do it without even thinking about it. And so that's really where, ideally I want to be. I don't know if everyone else wants to be there, but that's where I want to be, where it's these principles of personal development are just a natural way of who I am. It's not something that I have to think about. I have to think like, oh, dang it, like I didn't do my personal development today. it's that I just naturally, I naturally journal every day. That's just who I am. And I read a book every day because that's just who I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Sorry, I just had someone at my door, so I totally just got distracted for a second there. Any other comments with this? We're
Yeah.
move on.
So Tommy Kimber has her hand raised. Let me unmute her line 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, she should be unmuted. Go ahead, Tommy.
Hey, so first I just want to say I'm so blessed to be a part of a team with such amazing, humble, cool people. But just to kind of expand upon what everybody else has said, I raised my hand a little before, but the whole how do you put into action what you're reading every single day and stuff, it's really kind of just goes back to the whole adage, don't talk about it, be about it, right? So you can gain all the head knowledge that you want. And I think sometimes in life, we do go through the motions like that. And we're like, okay, well, I know that this is how I'm supposed to be and who I'm supposed to be. So I'm just going to keep reading all this stuff and know how to be that person. And it's going to somehow make you make the right choices, right? But I always take it back to the Word of God, and I had a leader tell me one time, and it was the best analogy I've ever heard because it's kind of my brain and my way of thinking. But she just talked about how when it goes, okay, so you are what you eat, right? Which is completely true. When you eat a food, your body takes it in, you digest it, you break it down, and it literally becomes your bones and your flesh and your blood, and it courses through every vein of your body, right? So the Word of God tells us hunger and thirst and desire and want for this. And I think it applies obviously to our relationship with God and understanding the Word of God, but also those desires that He places in our hearts. So doTERRA is a desire that He's placed on my heart, and knowing that. And so when you want to become the best possible leader that you can be for people, as far as knowing how to just help users and then knowing how to help people who want to share and knowing how to help people who want to build this business, you have to be that leader yourself. And so you have to hunger and thirst and want and desire for that. And so you're not just reading things to gain head knowledge so that you know how to do those things. You're literally taking them in, you're eating them, you're digesting them, and they're becoming you. And so you get to be that person who does those things and who is that leader and who desires for other people to have that too. So you can lead by example, and you can not just talk about it, but you can truly be about it.
Thanks, Tommy. I love it. So one thing, as I've been listening to, Melissa and you, Tommy, is something that keeps coming, to my mind is, is it necessary then to actually have to hire a coach or go to a certain seminar or something like that to advance in doTERRA, right? And so you look at, across the board, there's lots of people that stay stuck at certain ranks, right? For example, I've been stuck at Diamond for 2.5 years. I'm not gonna lie, right? And Melissa, when you were talking, this made me think about that, and I'm like, yeah, you kind of get to this comfortable zone, but you want more. I want to be blue, right? But it's not the same intensity as when I was hungry when I first started with doTERRA. That it was this has to change. My circumstances have to change. And it made me think about that when Melissa was making those comments, because it's definitely not the same pain that I have now trying to go blue as when I had, just started, started my journey in doTERRA. And so I look at, I see a lot of diamonds and above that hire certain coaches, and they hit a rate to help them. And I'm just curious, for diamonds and above, do you feel like it's necessary to start implementing any programs, and it doesn't have to be a specific one, but I'm just saying, other than mentoring with your upline, reading books, do you think it's necessary for someone to advance in doTERRA without going to seminars or events or hiring a coach? Because, I mean, like David was saying, you know, doTERRA is a personal development company wrapped up in essential oils. So is it necessary to have to go do anything else? Does that really put you that far ahead?
Hey, Courtney.
Yeah.
So that's a fantastic. First of all, that's a fantastic question. I could look. I think the answer is that you either need to grow. You either will need to have grown before you got to doTERRA, or you're going to need to grow while you're in doTERRA. And so, if you have never cracked one of these self-development books, then or you know, like I haven't personally hired a coach, but I have been to seminars in my life, and and so what I can tell you is that, you know, I'm looking back at just from my own experience. There is so much expertise in books that even if you became an avid reader and you were working very hard at implementing those things, that you can do it, I believe. But it always helps to have a mentor of some sort, someone to help hold you accountable. A couple thoughts that came to me that I think that probably need to be mentioned here is that, you know, we talk about personal development. Well, the fact of the matter is that everyone is being developed anyway. So life, our culture, our society, the music we listen to, the TV programs that we watch, the people that we hang around, the schools that we went to, we are all a product of personal development. The problem is that it's negative. There is negative conditioning that is taking place, and that negative conditioning starts to blind us to what the truth really is, like how great you truly can be and are, and what you can make of your life, and things like that. As someone who's built a team in internationally, I can tell you that there are people are a product of their society, and if all of us don't proactively go about deciding the type of person that we want to be, and then proactively seeking out the different conditioning, right? It's the different programming. So if society is programming you this way, then you have to say, okay, this is where society's taken me, and it's constantly happening. So it's always happening. I'm always being negatively conditioned. I'm always being personally developed into something that isn't what I want to be. So I'm going to take a proactive approach and say, no, this is where I want to be. And I'm going to surround myself with people who think like this. I'm going to read books that help me think like this. I'm going to listen to music that inspires me instead of the other things. I'm going to go to seminars. I'm going to seek counseling. I'm going to constantly recognize that if I don't do something, I will fall to the average of society around me, which unfortunately isn't all that great. And so if I don't want that, then I have got to pursue something better. And you also have to realize that it's an ongoing thing. Like Michael Klaus, I thought, gave some fantastic advice when he said there's a lot of people that like to read books. He goes, but my advice for you is to not read so many books. Pick a few books and read them over and over again until you understand it completely. And he mentioned, he goes, how many of you have read, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? And then he said, okay, raise your hand if you remember all the 7 habits. It's like, well, then why go on to the next book when you haven't mastered the first? And so that's why daily Bible study is critical. Like if you're, as a Christian, I can say that, think about it from the Christian perspective, and hopefully everybody here understands. I'm not telling anyone to go to any particular church. I'm just saying that what you need to do is you need to say, like, look at the pattern there. Every single week you go back to be reminded of what you knew before society got to you for the next 6 days. So then you go back to be reminded about what's important. And then you spend time every day reading God's word. And then you spend time every day praying to that same God. And then you spend time each week teaching your family about it. And then you spend time, it's like if you were to look at that type of discipleship, the root of the word disciple is discipline. And so it's you're disciplining yourself against the negative conditioning that's happening to you to live in a particular way, whether that's in a Christian or a belief set, a religion, or if it's a success mindset, because it's the exact same thing. The negative conditioning is happening. We have to choose to say, no, I'm not going to become the result of my society. I'm going to become the result of what I want to be or what God intends me to be or something like that.
I have some comments too.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Rod. Yeah.
go ahead.
Is it okay, Court? All right. All right, Mike.
Yeah, I'll come back. Cool.
Okay. Awesome. Well, one of the first thoughts is I've been around the industry a lot, and I think personal development is probably used loosely in regards to its importance as well. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of companies and things that are professional personal development outlets, or they produce a personal development product or that type of thing. And I've seen people kind of go down that route and not really make progress. And it's probably mostly because there's not a genuine immersion in it. And now at the same time, the reason personal development is so important is because all of us have a weak area. All of us have a wall. Like David had mentioned early, you're going to come face to face with yourself in the process of building a team, because it's going to force you into new skills and personality and emotional intelligence at a level that you haven't been confronted with before. And so that's why it's important that you advance through ranks, because you're essentially learning how to be the next level of person as you're ready. And so all these things are important. And so the way that I approach it is, as I identify weaknesses in myself, I generally try to focus my personal development or my continuing education around what my next step of knowledge needs to be. So, for example, Seth made a really good point about your personal development is going on in your life whether you like it or not. Unfortunately, your educators might be your family and friends. And your educator is probably the television set, and your educator is your romance novel or whatever, or your fiction books or whatever you're reading, or nonfiction books that you're reading, are your educators, and those are developing your thought patterns and your ideals and ultimately your value systems. Your neighbors, your neighborhood where you live is developing your value system, and we call this hypercultures. Anytime you're immersed in a specific culture, you might begin to adopt the ideals of that specific culture because you have social proof or evidence of those around you giving you feedback around that. And that's why your environment is so important to assess on how you're making your progress or how you're viewing your holistic personal development picture, because it's really a whole life picture, and it involves several different categories. So, for example, one of my core reading topics that I have chosen is biographies of billionaires and enormous people that have had enormous structural change on the world. So, for example, I have a book right now, a biography of Andrew Carnegie. And one of the interesting things that I pulled out of that book is that Carnegie became a world leader by working 4 hours a day. And I thought, wow, that's a revelation. And I've also been reading a book called From Barefoot to Billionaire. It's the life story of John Huntsman. And there's a principle that I've pulled out of there where there's a moment that he decided that it was his mission to cure cancer. And he was going to treat it as if the entire solution depended on him. And he said, then his next sentence in the book was, and I needed money and lots of it. Well, what I gained from that principle was that he had to give himself permission to be bigger than he was, a worthy cause. And because of that, it wasn't very long after that he actually became a billionaire, because he approached the topic, he approached it without any inhibition. In other words, is he worthy? Is it worthwhile? Is it something he should engage in? How does it conflict with his religious beliefs? All these things. It was that cause. So anyway, I've been reading systematically through different billionaires or structural changers, people that have changed the world. And now the other side is I recognize areas that are becoming realities for me. And I've been focusing my training on that. So over the past year, I've been reading lots of financial books because I recognize that my next phase is philanthropy and investment. And so I've been studying heavily to understand, what does investment look like? What does how do rich people invest versus how does the run-of-the-mill people invest? And so I've been reading books on that, and I've learned an interesting thing. I've learned that you really can't play the wealth game until you make at least $250,000 a year. And once you do, legally, you enter a new category of the world called an accredited investor. And essentially, the wealth game doesn't actually begin for you until you start earning $250,000 a year. I didn't realize that before. And now, had I known that, I did know that there were accredited investors, but I didn't realize that once you cross that threshold, there's a whole new level of investment that you can deal with because you are now legally qualified to do so. And so just fascinating stuff. But this is a story of personal development for me. I have a new financial reality in my life because of the size of my businesses. And now I have to become a new person. I have to now become a steward of resources and assets. And I have to learn how that functions in my life. Now, way back in the beginning of doTERRA, I had to learn how to create the income. And so now what I've realized through my personal development is there's this mountain that you're climbing, and that's the mountain of a $250,000 income. And when you get to that level, you now are allowed to play at the bigger table. And now you need to learn how to become not just a retirement investor, but a legitimate, hardcore, real live, how do I grow, how do I get money to work for me investor. And
well, I think the point is, Rod, as you're describing all this, the point is that people are, you develop at where you're at.
Right, exactly.
So like if you need to understand the basic core concepts, then start with Rich Dad Poor Dad or the Cash Flow Quadrant or
right. And that was the very first book that I started with was Cash Flow Quadrant.
Right. So start where you're at, figure that out, master it, and then just realize that personal development is it's a conscious decision to be what you want to be.
Right. And exactly. It's studying what you picture yourself being, and then figuring out where your weaknesses are and addressing your study and your focus and your development on those specific areas.
Because otherwise, if you don't do this, if you don't do it, then you are basically just becoming something that you have no control really over. You're just saying, I'm just I'm floating in the ocean, and wherever the wind goes is where I'm going. Until you say, no, actually, I have a sail and I can make a difference. I chart my course.
Right.
Well, and what's interesting about that is, so I've been on this course of trying to go Blue Diamond, and so I recently was like, what is it that I'm missing here? What am I not seeing, and why is this, such a struggle for me and stuff, And I did. I started asking myself that question. I started going, well, what does a blue diamond think like? What do they look like? What do they act like? What are they doing that I'm not doing? And so I started reaching out to blue diamonds and talking to them about what their day looks like and the activities they do outside of doTERRA, just to get a feel of their life at Blue Diamond, because I'm trying to do that. So I'm quote, quote, studying blue diamonds, right? And it's been really interesting. And it made me realize there are some things that I need to be doing to become Blue Diamond. And that was a huge shift for me to be able to do that, And so, as we look at, across the board, if you're feeling like stuck at a rank, that's something really simple that you can go do. Start talking to people that have the rank or the skill or the mindset that you're wanting, and start so you can acquire that. Because if you don't start talking to other people and masterminding with them, it's to me personally, it's easier when I can talk with someone than to read it out of a book. But I was reading this book recently called Outwitting the Devil, which is by far one of my favorite books. And in there, it's Napoleon Hill having a interview with the devil. And one of the things that the devil says is that one of the things he fears the most is like-minded people talking together, masterminding together, because of how powerful that is. And so I sit here and I think about, because I see people doing all these events and, like personal seminars, personal development seminars and stuff. And it's like, do I have to do that? Do I have to leave my kids for that? Do I have to, And what I'm realizing is that power of just masterminding with like-minded people that have the skill or the attribute or, the financial freedom or whatever it is I'm looking for and wanting to achieve in my life, that is one of the most powerful things that we can do for personal development is just masterminding with those types of people, and Steph, you kind of brought that up. Like you're a product of society around you. And so what are you doing? Are you staying there and continuing to, associate and talk and, experience life with people who are, less than you, or are you putting yourself above, that? So anyways, I think it's great comments that you guys have said and brought up. I mean, just food for thought for people to think about. And, what is it that you can do that's shifting? You don't have to go to seminars. They're great. And there's many people on this call that have gone to them and have learned something and went home and applied it, and it's helped them. It's been successful. But I guess I'm just trying to help you understand that there's a lot that you can do in personal development. It doesn't just mean you go to a seminar or just read a book, right? But just even in your lifestyle and the people you associate with and mastermind with, those are powerful ways to develop yourself.
Courtney, we have a lot of hands raised, but Mary Sisti has her hand raised. Would you like to hear from her?
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Okay, I know that we have shortened time, but I will just leave it at this, that you asked the question of, is it necessary for personal development and what you have to do to achieve personal development. And I personally believe that it's not just necessary, but it's vital. I never grew up with the thought of me having any type of business or an entrepreneurship was for other people. And I was just comfortable being comfortable. And now as I'm growing into my business, I've realized I'm not comfortable anymore being comfortable. And I'm used to the growth now, where if it's comfortable, I know that I have to grow again. And so when I want to become something, I study the master of that something. So if you want to become Blue Diamond, then you listen to the Blue Diamonds. Like you reached out. You personally reached out to the Blue Diamonds because they achieved something that you didn't, and you want to be there. So obviously you study the masters of that personal thing that you desire to have. And then I think it's to the point where now it's a part of my everyday life. And the way I look at my day in a positive light, how everyone it's just a new beginning every day. It's something that you can do for yourself. And I just look at it as, when I ask my question of what is my self-worth? How much is that worth? And I know now through learning through personal development that it's priceless. And when I look at a seminar and I see that there's some possible topics that I can learn to become a better leader and a mentor for others, I'm on top of it. I don't care how much it is with the price, because it's priceless for me. Because I actually put myself on that valuable level that I am worth that seminar, or I am worth getting that book. So it's my goal as a doTERRA leader to show others who have never spent time for themselves in their personal development, to show them that this is not just to help them through their doTERRA journey, but to change their way of life for the better, so they can become a better mother, father, husband, wife, an overall better human being in your community and in this life, because they're worth it.
Right.
Great point.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. And, I couldn't agree more. It's absolutely critical for you to achieve anything that you want in life. You do need to go through the personal development. And it's financial, it's physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual. it's all of that, right? And there's little things that you can do along the way. I mean, I remember going, okay, in the very beginning, it's like, I'm going to just put myself in a better position financially. Instead of being negative paycheck to paycheck, I'm going to have $1 in there, and it went to $50 or $100, and I kept raising that bar. If you talk about, that being that comfort zone, right? It's like I continue to increase that, I used to get sick just doing mastermind calls, very physically sick, just being on a call talking. Monday night, we had a spring tour with Emily Wright out here in Minnesota that I co-hosted with her, and I spoke in front of 1,300 people. That in the beginning would have probably just killed me. I probably would have died on stage right then, but I've been able to get past, and continue to expand my comfort zone and grow. And it's just critical. Like if you're feeling stuck in a rank, I would just say, look at personally where you can grow in any area. You may not feel like you can grow financially right now, but can you develop more physically? Can you develop more spiritually? Can you develop more intellectually? But find a way to grow, and you'll be surprised at the doors that will open up for your business just in working and becoming a better version of yourself in any area of life. Any other final thoughts before we close this down? I know there's a lot of hands raised. I'm super sorry I'm not going to be able to get to all of you. Any other final thoughts before we close it?
I have one final thought.
Diamonds and above.
Rod has a thought.
I have a final thought, and that is when it comes to personal development, remember that if you're not growing, you're dying. And so just keep that in mind. Anytime you're afraid of the new stage of growth for you, the only other option is to go backwards.
That's pleasant. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, bro.
Grow or die.
On that happy thought. Here, let's try that over here. Angie Archibald. She's not diamond yet, but
go ahead, Angie. Add joy back to the scene.
Bring a little light back to this.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's so critical and true. But man, that was so not inspiring to end on that. I love
Andrew,
you guys.
you
Okay,
up?
are you turning that over to Angie, or are we ending
Yeah.
the call?
Angie, you're gonna bring this home.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of pressure, you guys. That's not fair. But it's pretty easy to top what Rod did. Well, I feel bad. I feel bad because I raised my hand quite a while ago. But I do still have this thought that I will end the call with this super great thought. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
So you asked a question: do we have to do seminars? Do we have to have a life coach? And you guys are super inspirational and all this coaching and stuff. But I want to just put this out there. The reality for me is I actually do. Like, I suck at accountability by myself. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's really important to have accountability groups with other leaders that are on the same level as me, or with my own team leaders. And I don't know what's wrong with me, but I feel like I never really make progress unless I enlist people to help me stay accountable. So I have a lot more success when I do pay a coach or buy into a course, because for me, honestly, if I don't pay attention. So
that's
okay,
it,
so
Seth.
that's
We've got to start
my personal
charging
thing.
for this.
Some of us might be able to be like super self-driven and accomplish all these things and grow and grow and grow, and up we go. And some of us just might need a little more help. And so I'm a social exerciser, I'm a social dieter, and I'm a social personal developer. So it's not really that personal, but that's me. So I encourage everybody else who feels the same way. But it's okay to enlist other people and say, please help me grow. And it's okay to sign up for courses and to enlist help when you're not strong enough to keep going by yourself.
Yep. Well, and I think it's important that you recognize that, and so you know what you're like and what you need. And that's what all this is about, is putting the people, the events, the circumstances in your life for you to be able to reach your goals. And so thank you, Angie. Thank you, everyone that participated. Sorry we weren't able to get to everyone, and maybe we'll have part 2 next week. I don't know. But I wish each of you a very happy and successful week, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks, everyone.
If you've enjoyed our videos, be sure to go to edgesuccess.tv and subscribe. Wherever the link is.
Subscribe. He just freaking snorted, dude.
I say I'm too late. Got nothing in my brain.
Ooh, here's another one.